Sofia Daniel was reorganizing someone else's spice rack at 7 in the morning, and she was genuinely offended by how it had been arranged. Paprika next to cinnamon, garlic powder in front of the salt. Whoever set this up had no respect for the culinary arts and, frankly, no respect for themselves. She muttered under her breath, pulled everything out, and started again. Alphabetical, logical, dignified. This was not the plan she had for her life at 23. She had a degree sitting in a folder back home, a mother who kept sending prayers via voice note, and a cousin named BC who had said, with full confidence, "Sophia, just go and work there for 6 months, save money, come back, start your business." 6 months. That was the deal. She could survive anything for 6 months. She had arrived the night before, exhausted from travel, and the housekeeper, a small, no-nonsense woman named Mrs. Park, who moved like a retired military officer, had shown her to her room, given her a laminated schedule, and said exactly 4 words before leaving. "Mr. Kang does not tolerate noise." That was it. No orientation, no welcome packet. Just those 7 words and the sound of Mrs. Park's footsteps disappearing down the corridor. Sophia had looked around her room, which was, to be fair, nicer than any room she had ever slept in, and said to nobody in particular, "Mr. Kang sounds like a problem." She was not wrong. She finished the spice rack, stepped back, and admired her work the way an artist admires a completed canvas. Then she tied her apron tighter, picked up her cleaning cloth, and decided to tackle the kitchen counters next. The kitchen was enormous. Everything was either black granite or stainless steel. It was the kind of kitchen that looked like it had never actually been used for cooking, which in Sophia's opinion was a crime. She found a Bluetooth speaker in one of the drawers, because rich people apparently kept speakers in drawers, and connected her phone to it before she could stop herself. She told herself she would keep the volume low. She told herself it was fine. She told herself Mrs. Park had not specifically said no music, only no noise, and music was not noise. Music was culture. She pressed play. Afro beats. Low volume. Just enough to make the marble floors feel less cold. She started cleaning and started humming along. She was mid-chorus, cloth moving in wide circles across the counter, hips swaying slightly because she was human, and the beat demanded it when she felt it. Not heard. Felt. That specific shift in the air that happens when someone enters a room, and the room rearranges itself around them. She turned around. He was standing in the kitchen doorway in a black dress shirt, top 2 buttons open, sleeves rolled to the elbow, holding a phone in one hand and looking at her like she was something that had appeared in his house without explanation. Which, technically, she had. But still, Kim Jae-won was 30 years old. He had the kind of face that made you forget what you were saying mid-sentence. Sharp jaw, dark eyes that gave away nothing, hair pushed back like he had done it once, and it had stayed out of fear. He was not tall in an obvious, loud way. He was tall in the way of a person who had never needed to announce himself in any room he had ever entered. He looked at her. She looked at him. The music played. "Who gave you permission?" he said, and his voice was low and even and terrifyingly calm. "To play music in my house?" Sophia opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Mrs. Park said no noise," she said. "This is music." The temperature in the room dropped approximately 4 degrees. He looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked at the speaker. Then back at her. "Turn it off," he said. She turned it off. Not because she was afraid. Because she was on her first day and she still had 5 months and 29 days left. And this was not the hill. This was not the hill. He walked past her to the refrigerator, opened it, took out a bottle of water, and left without another word. Sophia stood very still for approximately 10 seconds. Then she whispered, To nobody. Okay, wow. Okay. She went back to cleaning. In silence. Very dignified silence. Mrs. Park appeared at 9 o'clock exactly, as though she had been scheduled by a very efficient algorithm, and proceeded to walk Sophia through the rest of the house. The house was not a house. It was a statement. 5 floors. A private gym. A library that smelled like money and old wood. A rooftop garden that made Sophia genuinely emotional because she had not expected beauty like that to just be there, growing quietly above a city. The 3rd floor is restricted, Mrs. Park said, standing at the base of the staircase with her hands clasped behind her back. You do not go there unless specifically instructed. What's on the 3rd floor? Sophia asked. Mrs. Park looked at her. You do not go there, she repeated, and walked away. Sophia looked at the staircase leading to the 3rd floor. She was not going to go there. She was a professional. She was a grown woman with a plan and 6 months and a business to start. She was not going to go anywhere she was told not to go. She went back to her cleaning schedule. By noon, she had finished the ground floor and was starting on the 2nd when she heard voices. She was not trying to listen. She was wiping down a hallway table and the voices were simply there, coming from behind a door that was slightly, only slightly, open. 2 men speaking in Korean. Fast, clipped, the way people speak when they are not having a pleasant conversation. She knew maybe 40 words in Korean. She had learned them from K-dramas, which her mother called a waste of time and which Sophia called education. She caught 3 words. 문제가 생겼어. There is a problem. And then the door opened, and she was standing there with her cloth in her hand, like a person absolutely not eavesdropping, looking up at a man she had not seen before. Broad shoulders, expensive watch, expression like a closed door. He looked at her cloth, looked at her face. Who are you? He said in English. The new maid, Sophia said. Since when? Since today. He stared at her for another moment, then stepped around her and walked down the hallway without another word. Sophia exhaled. She looked down at her cloth. She resumed wiping the table, this time with the specific energy of someone choosing not to think about what they had just almost heard. Lunch was strange because nobody told her if she was supposed to cook or just clean, and Mrs. Park had disappeared somewhere efficient, so Sophia made a decision. She cooked. She found ingredients, she found a pot, and she made jollof rice because she had the goods and the skill, and frankly, the house needed a real smell in it. Not a candle smell, a food smell, a home smell. She was plating it when she heard footsteps on the stairs. Kim Jae-won walked into the kitchen, looked at the stove, looked at the pot, looked at her. What is this? Lunch, Sophia said. I didn't ask for lunch. I know. I made it anyway. You can eat it or not eat it. That is entirely your choice. She said it the way her mother had taught her to say difficult things, calmly, looking at the person, without apology. He looked at the plate. He sat down. Sophia did not react. She turned back to the stove and began cleaning up, and she heard the sound of a fork being picked up and then nothing. Silence. The focused silence of someone eating something and not hating it. She smiled, very quietly, at the wall. What is this called? He asked. Jollof rice, she said, without turning around. A pause. It's acceptable, he said. Sophia pressed her lips together to keep the smile from becoming visible. Acceptable. This man was going to be a project. 감사합니다, she said. Thank you. Her K-drama Korean. She said it over her shoulder, casually, and went back to cleaning the stove. She did not see his expression. She did not need to. She felt the pause. That particular pause that means someone has been surprised and is recalibrating. You speak Korean? He asked. 40 words, she said. give or take. Another pause. Longer this time. 40 words is not speaking Korean. 40 words is a start, she said, and finally turned around to collect his plate, and found him looking at her with an expression she could not immediately name. Not cold, not warm. Something in between, something calculating and, underneath the calculation, something that might, if she was being generous, have been the earliest possible version of curious. She took the plate. He stood. He left. She washed the plate and told herself firmly that she was not going to be interesting to this man. She was here for 6 months. She was here for her business. She was not here to be interesting. The afternoon passed without incident, which was suspicious. Incidents, in Sofia's experience, did not disappear. They rescheduled. She was carrying fresh towels to the second-floor bathroom at 4 o'clock when she turned a corner and walked directly into Kim Jae-won's chest. The towels went to the floor. She went backward 2 steps. He caught her arm before she could go a third. They were very close. He was looking down at her. She was looking up at him. His hand was on her arm, and the fabric of his shirt was expensive in a way she could feel without touching it, and he smelled like something dark and clean and quietly devastating. She stepped back. He let go. "I'm sorry," she said, and bent down to collect the towels. He bent down at the same time. Their hands reached the same towel at the same moment. They both looked up. They were now very close in a different way. Low to the ground, eye level, the towel between their hands, neither of them moving. Sofia's heart was doing something unauthorized. "I have it," she said. "I can see that," he said, and his voice was different at this proximity. Lower, less public. She stood up. He stood up. She adjusted the towels against her chest like a shield and said, "Sorry again," and walked away at a speed that was not running but was adjacent to running. She got to the bathroom, closed the door, and stood there for a moment looking at the wall. 6 months, she said to the wall. 6 months and a business. That is all. The wall did not respond. At 5 o'clock, Mrs. Park reappeared and told Sophia that dinner was her responsibility for the remainder of the week, while the regular cook was away visiting family. Sophia said she could manage that. Mrs. Park gave her a look that suggested she found this confidence premature. Sophia made a goosey soup with a side of Korean spinach banchan she found in the refrigerator. She had no idea what it was. She had simply decided it belonged on the table, and set everything out just before 7. Kim Jae-won came to the dining room, looked at the table, looked at the combination of dishes. "Banchan and... what is this?" "A goosey soup," she said. "You eat it with the fufu, that white thing. Or the rice. The banchan is a side." "You mixed," he said. "I like mixing," she said. He sat down. He ate. He ate more than he had eaten at lunch, and Sophia, watching from the kitchen doorway under the pretense of checking if he needed anything, allowed herself a private, dignified moment of satisfaction. He looked up and caught her watching. She did not look away fast enough. "Come and sit," he said. "I'm the maid," she said. "I'm aware. Sit down." It was not a warm invitation. It was not even really an invitation. But Sofia Daniel had never in her life been able to resist a direct sentence. So she walked to the table and sat across from him because there was no good reason not to. They ate in silence for a moment. "Where are you from?" he asked. "Ghana," she said. He nodded slowly. "Why are you here?" "To work, save money, start a business." "What kind of business?" "Fashion, African textiles, Korean-inspired silhouettes. I've been designing since I was 16. He looked at her over his chopsticks. "And instead, you are cleaning my house," he said. "For now," she said. "Everything is for now." Something passed through his eyes. Something she did not have the vocabulary for yet. He looked back down at his food. "Interesting," he said, quietly. Not to her. To himself. Later that night, Sofia was sitting on her bed with her sketchbook. She brought it everywhere, always, drawing the shape of a collar she had been imagining since the afternoon, when she heard it. Footsteps on the stairs to the third floor. Multiple sets of feet. Low voices. The particular sound of men in a house being careful not to be heard. She told herself it was not her business. She went back to her sketchbook. 5 minutes later, a door opened and closed and silence returned. She put down her pen. She looked at the ceiling. She thought about Mrs. Park's face when she said, "You do not go there." She picked up her pen. She went back to drawing. She was almost asleep when her phone rang. Unknown number. She let it ring. It rang again. She picked up. Yobaseo. A voice. Male. Urgent. "Hello?" she said, confused. "Who is this? Is this the new housekeeper at the Kang residence?" "Yes." "Who is this?" A pause. "You need to be careful," the voice said. And then the line went dead. Sofia stared at her phone. She set it down on the nightstand. She stared at the ceiling for a very long time. 6 months, she whispered. Just 6 months. She turned off the light. In the dark, she could hear the city outside, soft and distant, and somewhere above her in this house that was too big and too quiet and too full of things she was not supposed to know, she could hear, just barely, the sound of men talking about problems she hadn't been warned about. She pulled the blanket up. She closed her eyes. And somewhere in the part of her that had always been more curious than cautious, a small voice said, "This is only day 1. By day 2, Sofia had already developed a system. She moved through the house early, before anyone else was visible, cleaned and set, and arranged everything before the silence had a chance to become uncomfortable. She had also, and she was not proud of this, memorized the sound of Kim Jae-won's footsteps. It was practical. It was situational awareness. It was absolutely nothing else. She was in the library when she found the book. It was on the floor behind an armchair, face down, the spine slightly cracked from someone reading it hard. She picked it up. It was a novel. In Korean, but the cover art was enough to tell the story. A couple. Rain. The specific expression of 2 people refusing to admit something. She smiled. She turned it over. On the inside cover, in handwriting that was clean and spare and completely consistent with a man who never did anything without intention, were 4 Korean characters. She took a photo. She ran it through her translation app. Start again. She stood with the book in her hands in the middle of the library for a long moment. She put it carefully back exactly where she had found it. Face down. Spine slightly cracked. Everything in its exact original position. She left the library. She thought about it for the rest of the day more than she wanted to. Lunch happened. She cooked. This time a Ghanaian pepper soup with Korean teok floating in it because she had found the rice cakes in the back of a cabinet and they needed to be used. Kim Jae-won appeared, looked at the pot, looked at her. "You are experimenting on me," he said. "I am cooking for you," she said. "There is a difference." "Is there?" "Experimenting implies I don't know what I'm doing. I always know what I'm doing." He sat down. "That," he said, picking up his spoon, "is the most confident thing anyone has said in this kitchen." "I'm a confident person." "You are a maid who reorganized my spice rack." "Your spice rack needed reorganizing." He ate a spoonful of the soup. His expression did not dramatically change because it never dramatically changed, but his shoulders dropped approximately 1 centimeter, and Sofia had already learned that for Kim Jae-won, 1 centimeter was a standing ovation. "The rice cake doesn't belong in this," he said. "I know," she said. "I put it there anyway." He looked at her. "Why?" "Because some things don't belong together on paper but work in practice," she said. She was talking about the soup. She was completely talking about the soup. He was quiet for a moment, then, Gudjon Matisio. That is delicious. She smiled at her own bowl. I know, she said again. That afternoon, she was cleaning the rooftop garden, watering the plants, pulling small weeds, talking quietly to a stubborn orchid that was losing its petals, when she heard the door to the roof open. She turned, expecting Mrs. Park. It was Kim Jae-won. He stopped when he saw her. She stopped watering. I didn't know anyone else came up here, she said. It's my roof, he said, but without heat. That's fair, she said, and went back to the orchid. She heard him sit down on the bench at the far end of the roof. She kept watering. The city stretched out around them in every direction, golden in the late afternoon light, and for a few minutes there was only the sound of water hitting soil and the distant noise of traffic below. The orchid is dying, he said. I know, she said. I'm talking to it. A pause. You talk to plants. I talk to everything, she said. Things respond to attention, plants, people. She paused. Orchids, difficult men. Silence. Are you calling me difficult? He said, and it was not quite a question. I'm calling you an orchid, she said. They're complicated and they require specific conditions, and most people give up on them. But if you figure out what they need, they're the most extraordinary thing in the room. She finished watering and stood up straight and turned around and found him watching her with an expression she was beginning to recognize. The one that meant he was thinking something he was not going to say. The one that sat somewhere between controlled and almost not controlled. You've been here 2 days, he said. I know, she said. You speak like you've been here longer. I'm a fast reader, she said. Of rooms, of situations. She tilted her head. Of people. He looked at her for a long moment. Sofia, he said, and it was the first time he had used her name. It landed differently than she expected. Quieter. Careful. Mr. Kang, she said. Don't call me that. What should I call you? A pause. J1. She nodded. J1. She repeated, trying the shape of it. It fit. She did not examine why it felt like it fit. He stood. He looked at her one more time, something passing across his face that he caught and closed before it could become legible. The orchid will be fine, he said, and left. Sofia stood on the roof alone for a moment, looking at the orchid. See? She told it. Attention works. That night, the third floor was loud. Not loud by normal standards, by J1's house standards, which meant she could hear movement and voices when she was 2 floors below, and all the doors were closed. She was not sleeping anyway. She had been sitting up, sketching a new collar design and refusing to think about the way her name had sounded in his voice. She heard what she thought was an argument. Not full volume. These were men who apparently conducted their conflicts at a controlled decibel, but the rhythm of an argument. Back and forth. Sharp pauses. Then a door. Then footsteps down the stairs. Then her door. A knock. 3 times. Precise. Sofia set down her pen. She got up. She opened the door. Kim Jae-won was standing in the hallway. He had taken his jacket off. His sleeves were still rolled up. There was something different in his face. Tighter, like a closed fist. Are you awake? He said. Obviously, she said. He looked at her. I need you to come with me. Where? Downstairs. She studied his face. She did not know this man. She was fully aware she did not know this man, but she had spent 2 days reading him, and his face was not the face of someone with bad intentions. It was the face of someone dealing with something heavy and choosing, for a reason she could not explain, to not deal with it alone. Give me 1 minute, she said. He nodded and stepped back. She put on her slippers and her cardigan and met him in the hallway, and they walked downstairs together in silence. He led her to the kitchen. He put water on to boil and sat down at the counter and put his head in his hands. Sofia sat across from him and waited. He didn't speak immediately. She didn't ask. The water boiled. She got up, found the tea without being told where it was because she had organized the kitchen and she knew where everything was now. She made 2 cups. She set one in front of him. He looked up. "You made tea?" he said. "You boiled water," she said. "It seemed like the direction you wanted to go." He picked up the cup. Silence. "Do you ever," he said slowly, "feel like everything you built could fall apart, and the only thing stopping it is you, and you're not sure you're enough to stop it?" Sofia looked at him. He was looking at the tea. He had the expression of a man who was not used to saying things like that out loud and was now uncertain about the decision. "Yes," she said. "When I was applying for this job, actually." He looked up. "I had exactly enough money for 2 months," she said. "No job offers. My design portfolio kept getting passed over. I had a whole plan, and it was standing there looking at me like a house with no foundation." She wrapped her hands around her mug. "I sat in my room, and I counted everything I had, and I decided that the one thing I wasn't going to do was fall apart before I had tried every possible option." She paused. "So I kept going." He was quiet for a moment. "That's not the same," he said. "No," she agreed, "but the feeling in the middle of it is." He looked at her with those eyes that gave away nothing and gave away everything. "Wainal Boracio Gure," he said softly. "Why do you look at me like that?" She knew enough Korean to not understand it perfectly. But she understood the tone. She understood the why. "Because you're worth looking at," she said simply, and picked up her tea. He didn't speak for a long time after that. They sat in the kitchen until almost 2 in the morning, drinking tea and saying very little, and it was the most honest room Sofia had been in since she arrived in this country. Outside, the city continued. Above them, whatever had happened on the 3rd floor had gone quiet. In here, it was just 2 people and warm cups and the particular intimacy of the middle of the night. When she finally stood to go back to bed, he looked up at her. "Sofia?" he said. She stopped. "Thank you," he said. She looked at him for a moment. "Chionmaneo," she said. "You're welcome." Her 40 words. She said it like it was nothing, and walked back upstairs before her heart could make any additional unauthorized decisions. She lay in the dark. She thought about his voice saying her name. She thought about a book on the floor of a library. Start again. 2 words. The specific weight of them. She closed her eyes. Day 3 was going to be complicated. And it was. But not in the way she expected. She came down to find a man she had never seen in the kitchen, sitting at the counter like he owned it, which she was beginning to understand was how everyone moved in this house. He was younger than Jaewon, broader, with the kind of smile that had gotten him out of trouble his entire life. He looked up when she walked in, and his eyes went wide in a way that was immediate and absolutely not subtle. "Annyeonghaseyo," he said. "Hello. You must be the new maid." "That would be me," she said. "I'm Park Hyun-soo," he said. "Jaewon's, how do I put this, professional associate." "You work with him," she said, in a manner of speaking. He leaned forward on the counter, chin on his hands, still grinning. "He told me about the Jollof rice." Sofia paused. "He told you about the Jollof rice?" He said, and I quote, "The new maid cooked something. It was acceptable." Which from Kim Jae-won is essentially a Michelin star. Sofia smiled despite herself and turned to start breakfast. He used the word acceptable? He did. He also reorganized his schedule to be home for dinner last night, which he has not done in 3 months, but I'm sure that's unrelated. Sofia said nothing. She cracked eggs. She kept her face very neutral. Behind her, Park Hyun-soo was grinning at the back of her head. "I like you," he said. I have a sense about people. You're going to be very interesting. I'm just here to clean and cook, she said. Right, he said, in the tone of a man who believed absolutely none of that. Jae-won appeared at 7:30, already in his jacket, and stopped when he saw Hyun-soo. Wei Isioni, he said flatly. Why are you here? I'm having breakfast, Hyun-soo said. Sofia is cooking. Jae-won looked at Sofia. She looked back at him. Something passed between them that was adjacent to the middle of the night and warm tea and honesty, and then he sat down and she cooked breakfast for two men who were, she was becoming increasingly certain, involved in something that explained all the things Mrs. Park refused to explain. Hyun-soo talked. Jae-won ate. Sofia moved around the kitchen and listened to everything without appearing to listen to anything. The meeting is moved to Friday, Hyun-soo said casually, spreading butter. Not here, Jae-won said, with a look that included the kitchen, which included Sofia. Hyun-soo looked at Sofia. Sofia was very focused on the stove. She doesn't know anything, Hyun-soo said. I'd like to keep it that way, Jae-won said. I literally cannot hear you, Sofia offered helpfully. Kitchen sounds. Hyun-soo covered his mouth to keep from laughing out loud. Jae-won looked at Sofia's back with an expression she could not see. It was the expression of a man comprehensively losing a battle he had not agreed to enter. After breakfast, after Hyun-soo left in a car that was entirely too expensive, and after Jae-won had been in his study for 3 hours, Sofia was in the hallway folding laundry when she heard it again. Footsteps. But different this time. Not the house's usual footsteps. Heavier. And coming from a direction that made no sense because she had mapped this house by now, and that direction was a wall. She stood very still. The sound stopped. She went and told Mrs. Park. Mrs. Park looked at her, measured and still, and said, You heard nothing. I definitely heard. You heard nothing, Mrs. Park repeated, with the specific weight of a woman delivering important information in the least helpful way possible. Finish the laundry. Sofia finished the laundry, but she stood in the hallway for a long moment after Mrs. Park left, looking at the wall that shouldn't have footsteps behind it, and she filed it under the category of things she was not going to forget. That evening, she made a benkwan, Ghanaian palm nut soup, and served it with rice. Jae-won ate it in a silence that was no longer the cold silence of the first morning. It was a different silence, warm at the edges, considered. This is the third new thing you've cooked, he said. I have a large repertoire, she said. How many dishes can you make? More than you have days left to try them. He looked at her. How many days do I have left? She paused. She had said it lightly, automatically, and it had landed somewhere more serious than she intended. 6 months, she said, give or take. He was quiet. And then your business, he said. And then my business, she agreed. He nodded slowly, the way he nodded when he was thinking something through. Show me, he said. What? Your designs. You said you've been designing since you were 16. Show me. She looked at him for a long moment. Why? Because, he said, and his voice was very quiet. I want to see what someone looks like when they're building something they believe in. Sofia sat very still for a moment. Then she got up, went to her room, got her sketchbook, and came back. She opened it on the table between them. He looked at the designs the way he looked at everything, carefully, seriously, with full attention. He turned the pages slowly. He didn't speak for a while. These, he said finally, are not small ideas. I know, she said. This one. He pointed to a dress, structured shoulders, kente fabric panels, a Korean geoghery-inspired neckline. This is two things that shouldn't work together. Does it work? She asked. He looked at it for a long moment. Yes, he said. It works. Sofia closed the sketchbook. She looked at him. He was looking at her with that expression, the one she was slowly learning to read, the one that lived in the space between what he said and what he meant. J1, she said. Sofia, he said. Just names. Just each other's names in the quiet of after dinner. Her sketchbook on the table between them like an open thing. What is happening on the third floor? She asked. The warmth in his face closed. Not cold, but careful. Nothing you need to know about, he said. The phone call I got said I needed to be careful, she said. So either nothing is happening, in which case I am not in danger and I don't need to be careful, or something is happening, in which case I probably deserve to know what I am being careful about. He looked at her. Who called you? He said, and his voice was completely different now. Sharp, alert. Unknown number, she said. The night of my first day. He was very still. Why didn't you tell me? He said. I'd known you for 12 hours, she said. I didn't know what to tell you, or whether telling you would make it better or worse. He stood up. He was not angry at her. She could read him well enough by now to know the difference. He was angry at something else, something she was not yet meant to know, and he was redirecting it into the structured, controlled energy of a man deciding his next move. You are not in danger, he said quietly, looking at her directly. I need you to believe that. Tell me why I should, she said. A pause. Long. The kind that carried weight. Because, he said, I would not let anything happen to you. It was not a romantic declaration. It was quieter and more serious than that. It was a fact stated plainly by a man who did not say things he did not mean. Sofia looked at him. Okay, she said. Okay, he repeated. She picked up her sketchbook. She stood. Jaljayo, she said. Sleep well, her 40 words. He looked at her. For just a moment, a genuine thing crossed his face. Not the calculation, not the control. Just something human and unguarded. Gone almost before it arrived. Jaljayo, Sofia, he said. She went upstairs. She closed her door. She sat on her bed with her sketchbook, and her heart doing something it was not supposed to be doing, and she opened to a new page and she drew, from memory, the exact angle of light on his face when he had said it works. Outside, the city hummed. Above her, the third floor was silent. For now. And Sofia Daniel, who had come here for 6 months and a business, who had reorganized a spice rack and cooked jollof rice, and talked to a dying orchid, who had sat in a kitchen at 2 a.m. with a man who ran something she did not yet have a name for, turned to a fresh page in her sketchbook and wrote at the top in her own handwriting, "Start again." She looked at it for a long moment. She smiled. She started drawing. If you just sat through this entire thing, drop a black heart in the comments right now because you are built different. Comment below, Team Sofia or Team J1. And if you want to see what happens on day 4, because trust me, day 4 is where everything changes. Hit that subscribe button and turn on your notifications. New episode drops this week and I promise you it is not what you expect. See you then. See?